Morning everyone, welcome to NHS Direct Trust Board meeting on Monday the 28th of October, the day of the big storm. So we're a slightly depleted number here in Leman Street, and I hope we've got a number of people on the phone. So I'm going to begin by giving our apologies. So we won't have Tim Heyman here and we won't have Louisa Dillner here today. Steve Duncan, also a non-executive director, is going to be dialing in later at the private session, but he's not available at the moment. So on the phone, I'm hoping that we've got Tricia Hamilton.
Yes, here.
Ruth Rankin.
Yes, here.
Morning, Ruth. Peter Catchpole. Not yet. Okay, Tim Walton.
Yes, Joanne, good morning.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that's everyone apart from Peter on the phone. Anna, would you mind just going and giving Peter Catchpole a quick ring, tell him we started? That would be very kind. Or text or something. Fantastic. All right. Let's...
Just thinking quorums.
Okay, so who's Alan? Quorum.
We are quorate with those members on the phone.
Perfect.
And Steve Duncan is joining us for the latter part of the meeting as well.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we're quorate, we can start. I haven't had any declarations of interest. Are there any that anyone wants to make either by phone or in person? No good. Let's look at the meeting minutes from the 30th. Does anybody have any matters of accuracy on the minutes of the 30th of September? No? Fine, good. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to, on the phone, I'm going to take silence as assent, and if you would want to contribute, you'll have to shout and attract my attention. Okay? Let's see how it goes. All right. Nick, would you like to just walk us through the action list?
Okay, I think the data that's related to 909 disposals has been sent round. I think there are further explanations which Tricia is working on because the numbers themselves didn't necessarily tell a story, and so Tricia's going to take that action to do that outside of the board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, Jackie, that second one is completed.
Yes, the second one is completed as well, and that was circulated to all board members and not had any feedback. The only issue was that the national data was total episode. It didn't separate out between call handlers and nurses, so it's just total episode.
Okay, and the third item's on the agenda. You'll cover in the finance report.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks very much. Then we can move on into the performance section of the agenda. So Nick, you separately circulated a Chief Executive's report. This is a very important one. So could you please just lead us through it?
Walk us through it, absolutely. So there are three items that I want to cover, all very significant. The first is that, as the board knows, we are now at a very advanced stage in the planning for the transfer of staff and our 111 our services, 111 services, and the 111 staff and call centres that currently provide them through to 5 ambulance trusts. And in fact, the first of the agreed transfers actually takes place tomorrow, on the 29th of October. Where we'll be passing over, transferring our Middlebrook and Carlisle staff and call centres and the service responsibility to North West Ambulance Service.
Nick, Peter, was that you arriving on the phone?
It was, yes.
Perfect, welcome. Nick's just taking us through his Chief Executive's report.
Two other transfers have been agreed, which are the transfers to the South West Ambulance of Exeter on the 4th, that's the Somerset service, and the West Midland service and Dudley on the 11th. We are expecting imminently NHS England to have gone through their external assurance process for the remaining 2 transfers, which are Beckenham and Milton Keynes. So the headlines are that those transfers are all happening and we are actively engaged in our part to hand over to the ambulance services as per the agreed plans. So clearly we will all be watching very carefully what happens tomorrow with the first of those transfers, and I'll make sure that the board are separately kept informed of how that goes.
I think it's worth just pausing there, Nick. I mean, my understanding from having spent time talking to you and other people about this is a huge amount of collaborative work has gone into this, and we're kind of doing more than watching. We are watching, of course, but we're actively supporting the handover in multiple different sorts of ways. It's a really complicated thing to achieve. We want to achieve it seamlessly with no impact on patients.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're committed to. Has anybody got any questions or comments or anything they want to add on the
Tim here. I'd just like Nick to confirm, I think it is right, that these dates are consistent with the revised budget that we prepared.
Yes, they've been factored
in.
in.
You didn't say that in your report, actually. That's a good achievement, Nick. Thank you.
Okay. So the final thing on the transfers, just to note that I have written personally to all of the staff that are transferring, and you can see the two forms of letter that I've sent.
Yeah.
Just to mark that. Okay. So the second topic is NHS England's commissioning intentions for those services that they commission from us, and clearly there are a number which are quite significant. And I think the first thing to say is that whilst Tim Kelsey has been assiduous in making sure that we are kept up to date with what direction NHS England intend to take, he's also been quite clear that the intentions that he's notified us of are subject to ratification through an NHS England board process. We expect that ratification to happen again imminently, but just for the avoidance of doubt, we don't have that at the moment. So we have a set of intentions. I do have confirmation, though, the first element, which is the requirement for contingency, which I've detailed in my report, and the fact that the 0845 service will be providing a service during November as a kind of overall national contingency, and then subsequently just to 3 areas of the country, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, Luton and Bedfordshire, at a reduced rate, and we'll do that until the end of February, and then the 0845 service will cease completely.
Yeah.
In addition, NHS England have indicated that they do not intend to commission either dental nurse assessment or the health information service, the CHIMES service, beyond the 31st of March 2014. As board members will know, those services were only ever commissioned up until 2014, and what NHS England are doing here is confirming that they do not intend to extend the current contracts. And as clearly subject to ratification, but assuming that they are, NHS, those services will close by the end of March at the latest. However, on a more positive note, NHS England have similarly confirmed, but it was subject to ratification, that they will continue to commission the digital services, digital assessment, and that's the health and symptom checkers and the Speak to Advisor service, together with Care Connect until March 15, which is in line with their original intentions. We've always had a 2-year agreement with NHS England. However, as a result of the third thing that I'm going to talk about, which is the future of the trust, clearly we're also in discussion with NHS England about the transfer of those services to alternative organisations moving forward. So that brings you up to date with the NHS England's commissioning intentions and the implications of those for what we then go on to talk about later in the board meeting.
Obviously, the big disappointment there is health information, medicines information, medicines advice, and dental.
Yes.
Which have always been a very important part of our multi-channel 0845 service were not included in the specification for 111 and have carried on independently through us and are going to cease, with a lot of staff who've been producing very good work and excellent value for patients and users and for the NHS, and not being in a position to carry on. I think that is a very sad thing.
It is. I agree.
We're going to be
How
talking...
many people are involved in those two services, Nick?
I don't have the numbers immediately to hand, but I think Jackie does. I don't want to quote exactly the wrong number. It's over 100.
So in terms of numbers for dental, it's 47 and health information 87.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
just the front line.
So it's not a huge number of staff, but it's a very, very special service.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more
Okay.
comments and questions about those commissioning intentions that we've heard from NHS England before Nick brings that all together in the consequences for the trust as an organisation? No? Okay.
Okay. So, as a result of our evaluation of the trust's viability, we have been in discussion, which we brought together in private session at the board in September, and subsequently have agreed with NHS TDA, Department of Health and England, that the organisation is not viable moving forward, and that as a result of that we will cease operations by the end of March. As a result of anticipating that and lining up alternative organisations to take over our services, be they 111, be they the NHS England or other services, we can genuinely say that no patient services will be affected by the decision to cease operations, because any services that are operational and have a life beyond March will be transferring to other organisations. Clearly we are going through a process of planning those additional transfers, and there will be further work to be done to reach a conclusion as to precisely which organisations and how exactly each of the transfers will take place. But I'm confident in reporting to the board that no patient services will be affected by NHS Direct's decision to cease operations by the end of March. So the final conclusion of all of that is, and this is the decision that the board is being asked to make, which we'll come on to in a separate agenda item, is to launch a formal consultation with staff that brings all of those things that I've just reported to the board into a single consultation with all staff that are potentially affected. And Roger will take us through that when we get to that agenda item.
Yeah. Thank you. This, of course, is a decision that's been well trailed. Because the board papers went into the public domain, that was effectively a public decision last week.
Yes.
And it's one that the board has been looking at and considering over a period of months now. So thank you for that, Nick. I think there is probably not a great deal of more discussion that needs to be held about that, unless anybody has any particular comments they want to make. Well, our job now is to maintain the quality, safety and efficiency of the services that we are continuing to provide up until handover into new organisations, and to support those new organisations, those different organisations, to take on the services seamlessly and to carry them forward. And that's the focus of our attention from now on. Which brings us into the corporate performance scorecard, and we should start by looking at the operational performance of our services.
Yeah.
Okay. Jackie, thank you for putting this together. Are there any particular comments you'd like to make about it?
No, I think we can see that for month 6 performance continues to be good, even though volumes are relatively low. Non-clinical access remains high at just under 100%, which reflects the staffing that we've got available really for non-clinical access. And clinical access is also improving. Warm transfers now 72%, last month they were 62%. And I think we've all agreed we'd never be able to reach the target for the warm transfers of 100%.
I think you might just speak up a little bit, Jackie.
Yeah, okay,
for our
sorry.
colleagues on the phone.
Yeah. I think the one area which remains red is actions arising from complaint action plans. Although there has been an improvement from last month. Last month it was 57% and now it's 77%. And Trish, who's on the phone, may wish to comment on those. Long-term sickness was shown as a problem last month and it's now green, so the numbers have reduced. I don't know whether Roger might want to comment on those. And that's
Thanks, Jackie.
all I wanted to say today.
I mean, in relation to the actions arising from feedback, I don't think, Tricia, you probably need to say anything more. We've looked at that a couple of times and we've been reassured that the most significant actions have been highlighted and actioned, and that there is obviously and understandably a backlog arising, as you would expect from the introduction of the new service. So I think we should, unless anybody disagrees with me, I think we should feel quite pleased that progress is being made and not uncomfortable with where we are. Roger, I don't know if there's anything you particularly want to say about long-term sickness.
No, in the only thing I'd want to mention is that in response to its increase 3 months ago now, we have reintroduced the colleague support programme and relaunched that, and also done a leaflet drop to all staff, really acknowledging that this is a difficult phase we're going through as an organisation, and making clear what's available to people, most notably the Right Core Care Counselling programme. So acknowledging that people are going to feel anxious about the circumstances we're in, but that doesn't necessarily need to lead to being off sick with stress. That's the very clear message. There are things you can do. So that's a message that's gone out in a leaflet drop across the organisation. And I hope that keeps sickness within acceptable levels.
Okay. We've got a slight excitement of people popping in and out to have their flu jabs here in Lehman Street.
Talking of sickness.
Talking of sickness, which is a really important thing that helps us maintain a resilient service during the winter flu season. So we will see one or two other people, I'm sure, go. I'd like to have mine. I think I might pop out, Alan, when we come to governance and compliance, if that's all right. If anybody wants to go before then, please feel free. I'm sorry it's not available to you folk on the phone. I'm sure if you want one, it can be very good. We're glad to hear that, Peter. Role
Can I
modelling.
get mine now, during the finance report?
I think not. No, you can't. I think you can't. Although it was very quick, so... No, I think you probably can now, because we could talk about operations first. So Sue has a comment on the operational side of performance, or a question.
Yes, the Clinical Governance Committee tracks a number of these KPIs, and two in particular I just wanted to highlight because they're now green, and that reflects significant effort on part of the Clinical Governance team and operations. The percentage of staff compliant in safeguard training is now green, which is excellent news.
That's great.
And that's as a result of significant effort on part of the training team. And the second one, which we always focus on very carefully, is the number of staff receiving call reviews.
Yeah.
And the target is in excess of 3, and we are at 100%, which is
great.
Fantastic news.
It's very good.
And certainly the Clinical Governance Committee appreciates all of the efforts that have gone into driving up performance on those KPIs.
Fantastic.
And that's really important in terms of our credibility in the transfer process as well, to make sure that all our people are trained and having their reviews, so that when they transfer over to Ambulance Trust, that they've got everything in order, and that's been an important push from clinical colleagues, and they've done brilliantly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really pleased to see that, because it is part of our responsibility to hand over services in good working order, performing well with staff that are fully trained, and it's great that we're able to do that.
We do need to
Joanne, it's Trish. We also were able to issue our staff with certificates which enable them to take those forward in portfolios to demonstrate their compliance with their safeguarding and other mandatory and statutory training, and the staff are receiving that very well.
Great. So there are a couple of comments, I think. Sue wants to make one, and then I think Jackie and Chris.
I had another one on top, don't know whether the other comments are related to this.
Okay, so you, hold on, Sue. Jackie and Chris, have you got...
I'm just saying that we do need to consider what sort of corporate scorecard we want to see once 111's gone.
Yeah.
I would say next month we still will want to see it because we will have had a partial picture during the month.
I agree.
But we just need to consider, are we just losing that little element of it, or do we want a totally different scorecard? Maybe share some options with people outside of the meeting.
That would be great, thank you. Chris?
There's just two quick things really. One is around the long-term sickness. There's obviously two ways of improving that. Either staff exit because they can't return to work, but I'm pleased to say the improvement from people returning to work.
Oh, that is good.
Which is important to note, I think. And the other is that I've carried out site reviews in the last 2 weeks with the leadership teams, because casting our minds back, they were an entirely new team in May, and part of their objective was to deliver competent and confident services, if you like, as part of the managed transfer. And I think part of the purpose of the site reviews is to acknowledge the fact that that's what they've done. And my main reassurance in terms of the transfers is, if all else is going tense or fraught around them, I'm personally much more confident than I would have been in May that the staff who are actually delivering it know exactly what they're doing, and the team managers know what they're doing, and the CQIs know how to do it. I think that is the best reassurance for me as an ops delivery person for the post-transfer period immediately after.
So you've seen teams that have matured, come together.
Definitely,
Yeah, good. That's really
done a
good.
really good job of it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sue?
The other observation rather than a question was the 111 national overview.
The comparative statistics,
And we were just saying that it's very important that our staff are transferring over with the appropriate training and etc. This piece of paper demonstrates to me how stable and what good service we're providing under the 111. I mean, on all of these metrics, we are as good as, or not performing better than the other providers on the 111 service. And that means we're transferring over a service that's operationally sound to the step-in providers. And I think that should be recognised, particularly with our staff, because that's because of the quality of the staff that we have and the commitment they've given to the service.
And the quality of the management and the teams that are supporting it.
Definitely.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, does anybody on the phone have questions or comments on the operational side of our performance package?
I just have one comment, and I agree with all Sue's points about the national picture. I thought the efficiency and productivity in all the circumstances showed great resilience and obviously improvement and stability in some ways, which I think is a fantastic achievement. So I just wanted to underline the well done bit to our staff for getting there, and the managers for working with them on doing that as well. So we will be handing over a fantastic, I'll call it DNA train of services to the new providers, which I'm sure they'll appreciate.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Okay, shall we then move on to the finance report, Jackie?
Yep. Move on to the
We've got Nick back, I'm glad to see.
Yep. So we've got a year-to-date deficit now of 15.6 million, which is actually 3.4 million adverse from plan. And we have been adverse from plan for a little while now, and it's all to do with not getting the fixed costs element from 111 providers. The Trust Development Authority are starting to take more of an interest now that we're 3.4 million adverse against plan. And they have questioned why we're so far behind plan. I have explained that it is because of the fixed costs on the 111 contracts, and that we will be on track if we apply the Q1 underspends. Now, they then sort of question me, well, how can we satisfy ourselves as a board that all of the income that we've got included within our accounts, we will get
It's
it.
realisable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm proposing that we do is that we have a finance committee prior to the next board meeting, and that will consider all of my rationale for why I think the income that we've got included in the accounts is reasonable. so that we can get sort of an internal sign on that. We can look at what we now think the operational forecast outturn is for the trust, because we set a budget of 26 million deficit and we need to see where we are against that. And we also need to consider what the forecast costs are for the trust closure. And we need to be able to demonstrate that we're minimising all of our costs wherever we can. And I think the best way we can do that is at a finance committee.
Where you've got the time to go through the detail.
I've spoken to Tim, he's in agreement with that. We just need to try and agree a date at a time, which I think would be best if we have it before the November board meeting.
Okay.
We can. I agree, Jackie. We can fix that offline. I was going to talk to you today, of course, but.
Yeah, there is one other financial risk which I've, at the moment, not really highlighting in our forecast, but that is the risk of local 111 commissioners coming back to us and trying to invoke some clauses in the contracts that we sign for 111. I think that there is potentially a liability of around about £50 million if we accept all of the claims. And I think we've had about 5 now from the contracts, and at the moment they've been escalated to the TDA and NHS England, and they are considering what they want us to do.
Okay.
So there's got to be a decision about whether the costs are going to be held centrally or locally.
Nick?
I just wanted to comment on what Jackie's just said vis-a-vis the contract. So,
because at one level that feels very alarming, and at another level it's a bookkeeping exercise. So,
well, right, exactly. So I think the first point that we should all continue to concentrate on is managing those things that are within our control, and in particular our costs. And I can assure the board that we have a process of control with regard to that. So I think that's the first point to mention. With regard to contracts, we have to date adopted, at the request of NHS England and the TDA, a very pragmatic approach to discussions with commissioners, and not sought to be unduly aggressive or confrontational in the way that we've approached it. However, if we were to be put in a position, which apparently we are, where claims against us that are based on the contracts are made, that we are not in a position to agree, then I think we will also have to review the pragmatism that we've adopted to date in the face of, for example, the fact that our 111 contracts are all block contracts, and yet pragmatically we've agreed with our commissioners that we will reduce the scale of the income that we would expect from them because of reduced volume. Well, that's not how a block contract works. So I think we need to get ourselves ready with our arguments, but ultimately I suspect that the arguments around income from 111 contracts will only be resolved through arbitration or through decision making at NHS England and TDA level.
I'm sure, Nick, that you'll be continuing to take a collaborative, sensible approach. We want to work with our commissioners, with our partners, with the TDA and NHS England to reach a good resolution on this.
That's
and
what
I'm sure that's what we'll be doing.
Yeah.
And I can see that there are potentially some challenges arising in that, but those challenges we'll face alongside the other involved parties.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's also fair to say that if there is no resolution with NHS England and the TDA, we will have to account for them in our accounts.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question, Jackie. So how protracted could these discussions be, Nick? Could they go past the end of March?
No.
No, they're all writing to us now, Tim. So now that we're close to the transfers, they're all writing to us now. So we've had about 5 now. So.
All right. But we've got enough time because we're.
Yes. No, these won't be protracted in that sense. No.
Okay, that's good. Jackie, is there anything else you wanted to point us towards? Are there any questions on the financial side? So cash management is obviously an issue.
Yes,
do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah, that remains an issue, and as requested last time, I've included a cash flow statement at Appendix 6 so that you can see when the money sort of runs out and comes in. We've made some progress in that the 56 million that we secured last year for decommissioning, we are allowed to keep calling on that. So we haven't got to do temporary borrowing for the new deficit. We can use that, so it's a little bit easier.
So once again, sounds like you're keeping in very close touch with our colleagues at the TDA to make sure that there's no question of a short-term cash problem arising which would affect our staff.
So they are very challenging with us. And we can't have the money unless we absolutely need it. But so far,
I scribbled all over the paragraph on this on page 9. The interim measure. We just don't want to have any interim measures. It's a complexity that we don't need, and it just needs our commissioner to pay the bills.
Yes.
And it's causing all sorts of not only causing us a load of problems and a diversion that we don't need, but both in NHS England and the TDA. So.
And I can confirm we've still not received any of the 5.2 million for quarter 2 0845 contingency.
The 0845 contingency.
Yeah.
That's what we should pursue.
Is there any reason for that?
Because
we delivered a good service as far as I can see.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the service. It's all to do with it was commissioned by NHS England, and now they are saying they're not paying. We've got to invoice the CCGs, and we do not have a contract with the CCGs, so they are reluctant.
And at the same time, they're asking us to extend it for the third time. Is it the third extension?
Yes. Yeah. So it's another £5 million from October to February.
Okay.
But we're clear that providing the service operationally is something that we are responsible for doing, and we will make the appropriate requests, or I use the word requests carefully, for the money to cover those costs, and we're confident that that money will appear one way or another. It must do.
I agree.
Okay. Sue?
I was just very conscious in terms of following the numbers through. What I would find quite helpful is a reconciliation which shows there's an operational deficit that we have a budget for that we were anticipating, and I would quite like to see the numbers around that. We are on track for that budget.
We're on track for that budget. It's likely to be a little bit lower than the 26 million deficit in operation.
So all of these things are outside of the operational delivery.
Yes.
These are negotiations around cash payments and
so they're about where the money is coming from and when, rather than us running up costs that aren't expected. That's not the issue.
That I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, absolutely right.
All right. Thank you. I think we're probably done then on the finances, and we can move to the governance portion of the agenda. So I'm going to leave that, Sue, can I leave that in your hands for the moment while I go and get my jab done? And I think Alan will talk us through the board assurance framework. Yeah?
Thank you very much. The board assurance framework paper is at item 8 on the agenda, and follows the same format as last month, which seemed to be quite well received by the board. The focus this month, as I'm sure would be anticipated, is moving now towards the efforts to ensure the smooth transfer of services, as already been mentioned, to other providers, and therefore the detailed spreadsheet, which is still fairly impenetrable to the naked eye, unfortunately, but has additional items for the corporate deliverable number 5, which is essentially the work to prepare the services for the future beyond this current year. So understandably there are more actions now planned as things become clearer. The risk lead group, which I mentioned at the last meeting, has now been established, so that there is now a process of peer review of the corporate risk registers which feed into the board assurance framework, conducted by senior managers across the organisation. So this BAF now essentially has the full endorsement of that risk lead group and does reflect all of the local risks with a rating of 12 and higher in those individual directorate registers. And I suppose the only comment that I'd make in addition, in closing, is that the column that shows the residual risks remaining at a high red RAG rating after the impact of actions, understandably, is primarily focused on our financial challenges, which Jackie's just been explaining in some detail, and the challenge of maintaining staff numbers and staff morale. And again, that will be another focus of our discussion later on, and already has been mentioned in the meeting so far. So that really, in a sense, is some relief that there are all of the risks that are flagged as being of particular concern are in areas where one would expect, and thus far there are no surprises. And that really is all that I was going to say so on that item.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions in the room? No. Any questions on the phone?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Actually, just comment on one,
Yeah.
Sue, and that is CD3, the first one on CD3, which remains red. And for me, this is our objective, I think, has to bring to the next board, by the time the board meets at the end of November, I think we do have to have a decommissioning plan in place with all the people in place who have been corralled until the point where they need to leave. That it needs to be as cost effective as it possibly can be, but it also needs to be realistic around the duties related to the closure of the trust. So we're working on that stuff now. I think it will be part of the submission to the Finance Committee, and then we'll come to the board with a more detailed plan at the November meeting. Okay.
Thank you, Roger. Joanne, I think we...
Fine, are we done on the BAF? Great. So, was that the... That wasn't the consultation?
No.
No, that's perfect.
Sorry,
Okay.
you're not going to get away with...
No, good. No, I want to have a proper conversation about this. So, this is possibly the most important decision we want to make today. It's about launching our staff consultation, which is a consequence of all the decisions that have been made about transfers and commissioning of the services that we provide. This is obviously a major exercise. It's going to affect a lot of people. I'm glad to say that as an organisation we have a lot of experience in staff consultations now, for better or for worse, and are quite skilled at it. Roger, I know you've got a presentation that you'd like to talk us through.
So for those of you in the room, you've got a presentation in front of you. Alan Whittle sent all colleagues on the phone the presentation by email at about 10:10, so I hope you've picked that up. And the reason I want to do this through a presentation is twofold, really. I don't want to drag you through the detail of the consultation document. Whilst these documents I know you're fairly familiar with by now, they are also long, and so I wanted to do a summary. But secondly, certainly for executive colleagues, this presentation is the basis of the presentations they will be undertaking to launch the consultation towards the end of this week and into next. And I know that non-executives have been invited to those meetings as well. So this is the starting point for the presentations that will be given at site meetings in the next 10 days or so. So I will take you through this almost line by line. So if you go to the second page, the question for staff is why are we undertaking this consultation now? And you'll be very familiar with the first page in that Nick has already taken us through this in his Chief Executive report, that we are transferring our 111 services to ambulance trusts by December, and there is an expectation not only of the ones that have already been agreed, but also the South East London, the London and Bucks contracts as well. There is an intention to transfer the appointments line to a new provider by the 1st of April 2014, and that procurement is already well underway. As Nick also described in the Chief Exec's report, there is the intention to transfer a series of other services to new providers by the beginning of the next financial year. And there is the intention to close the operations of the Trust by the end of this financial year as well. The only services that we will definitely not be transferring, of course, are the dental nurse assessment and complex health and complex health information medicines inquiry services, which will be, the intention is at least to close them down by the 31st of March. So I'm going to take you through each of the services in turn, because the nature of the consultation for each group of staff is slightly different. There are nuances, so it's something that you need to know. So as you know, we're transferring the 111 services in the North West, West Midlands, Somerset, Buckinghamshire and London to local ambulance service trusts between tomorrow, when North West transfers, and the 26th of November. That means that NHS direct employees in Exeter, Carlisle, Middlebrook, Dudley and Beckenham, who directly work for the local 111 service, will transfer to the local ambulance trust under TUPE regulations, and because of that we're not including any of those people in this consultation. So people who have been assigned to the 111 service that will be transferring to ambulance trusts are not included in the consultation. There is an exception to the type of transfer, and that is that for our employees in Milton Keynes, they won't be immediately TUPE transferring to South Central Ambulance Trust. What will be happening there is, in order to deliver the winter contingency service and a proportion, at first about 80% of the Buckinghamshire contract, they're going to be seconded to South Central Ambulance Service from mid-November until we think the 31st of March.
Sorry. That was me. Forgive me. Sorry about that.
Sounds like a chainsaw to me. If the winter contingency service ceases on the 31st of March, and at the moment we expect it to because it's not being commissioned beyond that, then those people will return to NHS Direct. But in fact, they will return to NHS Direct in order to become redundant, and because of that, they are included in this consultation.
How many staff, Roger, roughly?
Milton Keynes staff, about 80.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And that means also that there are or rather separately, there are a number of employees who do work for the NHS 111 service but cannot be assigned. They cannot be assigned because they do not work directly for one contract. Those people will be subject to the consultation, and the chances are that they'll be at risk of redundancy at the end of the consultation. Although, of course, employees with skills and experience in 111 may very well be highly sought after, and so it may very well be that we are able to not transfer, but help some of those employees become appointed into organisations either commissioning or providing 111 services during their period of notice. And in fact, our experience so far is that a lot of NHS Direct employees made redundant earlier in the year are working for commissioners or providers of 111 services already. So we'll certainly be supporting employees to do that. Okay, taking you to the next page and to the appointments line. So the Health and Social Care Information Centre is in the process at the moment of re-procuring the appointments line on behalf of NHS England. And so it's planned that the TAL service will transfer to a new provider on the 1st of April 2014, although the new provider has not yet been announced, and so we don't know who it is. Nevertheless, it's our strong expectation that substantive NHS direct employees working directly for TAL will transfer to the new provider under TUPE regulations on, or possibly before, but probably on the 1st of April 2014. However, there is an important caveat here, and that is that until we know the identity of the new provider and its plans for the future, we will not know if it will be using all or any of the Chatham, Hedge End and Milton Keynes sites. And what we can't do is give assurance to our TAL staff that although they will TUPE over to a new provider, that their employment will continue either very long or at all after the transfer. And that's an important caveat to include in the section about TAL. And all we can say to TAL employees at this point is that we'll let them know who the new provider is and what their plans are as soon as we can. Okay, and next on to the digital assessment service. So that's the health and symptom checkers with Speak to Advisor. As you know, we're currently in negotiations with a new provider to whom it is very likely we will be able to transfer the digital assessment service with Speak to an Advisor on or before the 1st of April. Although the decision to continue to commission the service is still to be ratified by the NHS England board. And you will know that we are negotiating with a single provider, but we are not able to say who that provider is at the moment, certainly not in public. We hope to be able to say that by the end of the consultation period, so that the expectation is that employees who work directly for the Speak to an Advisor service and health and symptom checkers will transfer to the new provider under TUPE regulations on or before the 1st of April 2014. However, it's the same with this service as it is with TAL. Until we know who the new provider is, until we know what their plans are, although it's our expectation that, for example, the home workers will be able to transfer to the new provider, until we know that for sure, we aren't able to confirm that that's the case, nor that any of the other clinical advisors who currently work for the Click to Advisor service from our sites will be able to continue to work either at home or because we're transferring those sites, or that people may be able to transfer to sites owned by the new provider which are close by. So we're not able to confirm any of that at the moment. Now, as well as TUPE transfers, it is possible that there will be a small number of positions that when the health and symptom checkers Speak to Advisor service is reconfigured in order to transfer into the new provider, it's possible there will be a small number of new appointments into that service. But that work is still to be done, so we're not able to be specific about that at this stage. And then on to the following page, it's a similar story for employees working with Care Connect, the repeat caller service, and the NHS 111 telephony managed service. We know that it's NHS England's intention to continue to commission these services, though the decision still has to be ratified by the board. And we will know the identity of the new providers for these services in the next few weeks. And so the expectation is the same as it is for the Click to Advisor service, that is that people who work directly for these services will be able to transfer under TUPE regulations by the 1st of April, but the caveats remain for these services as well. Care Connect, of course, is delivered out of 4 of our existing sites, and so the new provider, again, has to either take over those sites or have a site nearby for those people to be able to transfer. So again, we can't today confirm to those people that they, having transferred, will be able to continue to work for us. And similarly, there may be a small number of appointments outside the front line in order to be able to transfer these services in good order. We can be a bit more definite about the next three services, that's National Pandemic Flu, Healthy Change and Health Lines, because commissioners of these services have made it very clear that they intend to continue to commission them. And we will be able to, I think, to be able to be specific about the new providers in the next few weeks. Although again, even here, although the intentions are firmer, we can't at the moment be absolutely specific about whether people will be able to transfer under TUPE regulations or not. Incidentally, the Commissioners of Healthy Change, which is a Nottingham-based service, are saying that they would want that to be provided by a local provider in the Nottingham area. All but one of our people who delivers the Healthy Change works out of our Nottingham site, so it seems very likely that they'll be able to TUPE transfer. So that seems very promising, though we won't be able to confirm that immediately. And then finally, as I said earlier, NHS England has been clear with ratification by its board that it won't be commissioning dental nurse assessment and complex health information and medicines inquiries beyond the end of this financial year. And so at the end of the consultation, it's very likely that employees working directly for these services will be at risk of redundancy. We'll be working as closely as we possibly can with local commissioners where we have dental nurse advisors and health information teams to see if they want to include some of these employees in their services. And it is just possible that as part of the transfer of the digital assessment services into a new provider, that they may want to bring some health information staff and even some dental nurse advisors in with them. And that's part of the work we'll be doing with the potential new provider over the next few weeks. But the default position for these employees at the moment is that they'll be at risk of redundancy at the end of the consultation. And then finally, the effect of closing the operations of the trust. There are a number of small contracts, most of which will cease by the 31st of March, and they include the Royal Bolton Hospital pre-op assessment, Cumbria Direct, which is a mental health service, telehealth services within technology, and obviously the CAT-C services, which will in most cases revert to ambulance trusts. Of course, the decision to close the operations of the trust and transfer, really in most cases, only the service itself and without any or many of the support staff, certainly in most cases only specialist support staff and not general support staff, will mean that all or most of the support staff who work for NHS Direct now, and certainly areas like corporate governance and board support, they will all become at risk of redundancy at the end of the consultation. As I said, in response to the Bath item on the agenda, there will be a small decommissioning team, however, that needs to complete the annual report and accounts and continue with decommissioning tasks beyond the end of March, because of course we will remain operational until the 31st of March, and so there will be a trail of decommissioning tasks beyond that. The planning assumption we're making at the moment is that nothing and nobody will remain beyond the 30th of June, and clearly if we can do all the decommissioning before that, then we will. And we haven't yet organised with the TDA the circumstances in which that work will take place. Will we still be employed by NHS Direct? Will we second to the TDA? Will the TDA employ the people who remain? That's still to be done, as well as, of course, the actual dissolution of the trust, which hasn't been determined either yet. So, as I said, it's quite a complex and a series of manoeuvres here, I'm afraid. So, sorry to have taken you through all of that, but I thought it was important because there are many groups of staff whose destination is going to be different. And of course, one of the features of what I've just been talking about is the very small amount of information that we can be specific about and confirm in the next few days. And that is going to be very frustrating for our colleagues in the organisation. And we just have to be ready for that as we go out and do our meetings. Coming on to the staff consultation then. So staff consultation of 45 days will start on Wednesday. As you know, the formal element of it is the fact that because we've got a trade union recognition agreement, the actual formal consultation is with reps of our two major trade unions, RCN and Unison, and our first meeting's at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. It's 45 days and not 90 because the legislation changed in the summer, so for organisational changes of more than 100 people, that's come down from 90 to 45 days. So we will end it on the 13th of December. So we'll start formally on Wednesday, and then we'll have launch meetings. We've got a series of launch meetings from Wednesday through to a week on Sunday. The last one, I think, is in Middlebrook, a week on Sunday. And they will be done twice a day. And we will try to get as many people as we possibly can to those meetings. And then the rest of the consultation paraphernalia you'll be familiar with. We've set up a dedicated intranet site. We'll produce weekly briefings and responses to frequently asked questions on a regular basis. Everybody will be offered a one-to-one. And then we've organised a board seminar for the 11th of December to discuss the major themes, and there will be an outcomes paper at the board on the 16th of December. And just a word of warning for board colleagues, and that is that we will have to table the 16th of December outcomes paper because the consultation only ends on the 13th. So that we will not be able to send you that in advance of more than a day. So just to let you know about that. And then support for employees. As I said to you earlier in the meeting, in relation to long-term sickness, we've reintroduced the colleague support programme and set out there are the areas of support. A significant number of people are going to become redundant through this process, so I think we have to give good career support to people over the next few months, because a significant number of them will not have accessed the support last time because they thought they weren't going to be at risk of redundancy. So we have to be aware of that this time round. And that's it, colleagues. So any questions, comments, I'll take now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. That was really helpful. I think I must say, I think this pack is extremely clear. I mean, you're right, it's a complex series of manoeuvres, but it's very well laid out. And the limits of what we're able to say are very clear. So,
and very frustrating.
And frustrating, we understand that.
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of information that we have, but then there's, which we can't share, which is frustrating, but there's more that hasn't been worked through. Yeah. And in particular, the one that really stands out for me is people who will transfer to new providers, but we don't know where the new providers will want to provide the service from geographically. So, and that is obviously the practical question that will in effect determine whether people will carry on having work, and we appreciate how difficult that is for people. Anyway, thank you, that was pretty clear, very clear. Are there any particular questions for Roger about this? Alan?
Just one statement. I'm not sure that I picked up a statement around those staff who are already subject to notice of redundancy.
It was on the first page.
Yeah.
I may not have.
It's just for clarity. Those staff who are
I don't know if I did.
Are all who are currently already under notice of redundancy will not be part of the consultation.
That's right.
Okay, thanks, Alan. That's good.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Just on a practical note, I think non-executive directors have been given information on the dates? I'm looking for
No, I don't think so.
I think that may have
For consultation
may have
meetings.
fallen between various stools. Probably mine.
I can't recall it.
So I'll make sure before the end of today that you get information about each of the sessions, where they're taking place, to the extent it's relevant, which exec is up for doing the presentation.
Yeah.
I don't suppose that will alter your choice of dates that much, but you never know. And if non-executive directors are able to join in those some or all of those meetings, that would be great. So I'll make sure we get that detail out today.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move us along then through to feedback from committees, because I want to spend a short time, it will be a short time, talking about patient experience calls that we've had. So, Sue, we've got some minutes of yours. You've talked us through the main issues quite comprehensively. I don't anticipate any questions on the minutes. No, thank you, everyone. Peter, we've got a set of minutes of yours from the 4th of October.
Yeah.
Is there anything you particularly wanted to highlight?
I think the only thing to note is the on item 7, the internal auditors have become part of a private sector organisation. It does materially affect the contract we have, and we will be keeping the current team who we currently have, and we have a lot of confidence in. So other than that, everything else is business as usual, and as Sue has already mentioned about the safeguarding and frontline compliance with training. So that's the thing I was brought to attention, but it's already been done.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to move us on then, unless anybody has any penetrating questions for Peter and the Audit Committee. No? Okay. So we've got the next section on our agenda is about stakeholders. That's visits to sites and direct patient experience. I don't think I'm going to encourage us to have a long conversation about site visits today. There's obviously going to be a new round of engagement with staff at site through the consultation. I think it'll be more important to pick that up. So if you will consent, I'll move straight through to the patient experience calls. Tricia, thank you for circulating those and for the introductory paper which was with our pack. My impression was that these were good, straightforward calls. I wonder if you could just introduce them in the most succinct way possible, and then if there are points that people want to make, we'll have a brief discussion about it.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The first call was a call into our DHAS service and was sent in order for the board to be assured of the services those patients were receiving, and equally to offer a contrast. The second call, which board members were sent, which was a call into our 111 service. I'll look at that, Chair. I'll just take questions and comments.
I'm not sure that's quite what we had, Tricia. We had a 111. We did have a 111 call, South East London.
Yeah.
And I thought that the first call was 0845 contingency.
Oh, I do apologise. Yes, you're absolutely right. It was 0845 contingency. Sorry, okay. I'm ahead of myself with all of the call reviews I've been doing. Yes, so it was to our contingency service, but it still does give a contrast of the services the experienced patients have bringing the 111 service and those still choosing to contact our 0845 contingency.
Okay. So, was everybody able to listen to those calls? Yeah. Okay. I mean, they were unusual, really, because they were short. Yeah. Or unusually short for the calls that we listened to.
I think the one point I would note, Chair, is the 0845. I recognise that the patient and the assessment of the patient's symptoms was within a minute of the call. So we identified what the issues were, and then demographics were taken later. In the 111 call, it took over 2 minutes to conclude the demographics before we got into asking the patient what the problem was.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That is an interesting contrast. Okay. Would anyone like to give feedback on these calls?
not more general feedback. I
Yeah.
had only one comment. It was a bit
Yeah,
like yours,
yeah.
which is that I thought these were just good, straightforward calls.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was good the way that on one of the calls, the fact that the caller wasn't registered with the GP was dealt with. And I just wondered whether, as a point to note, that in order to kind of help close that gap, there would be some flag that would enable that person's non-registration with the GP to be followed up in an appropriate way. It's just, I think it's something that 111 could be very usefully used to help do. Although, of course, 111 will be the subject of use by lots of people who legitimately aren't registered with the GP because they're visitors to the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question I had on the 0845 contingency call was, I think the outcome was self-care. This was the little boy who had a fever and a rash.
Yeah.
And yet actually what happened was he was taken to a walk-in centre. And I was puzzled by that, because the question was, what would you have done if you hadn't used the service? I would have gone to a walk-in centre, called the service, got self-care advice, and went to a walk-in centre. So I don't know, Tricia, if you had any comment about that, but it did seem slightly surprising, since I thought that the self-care advice was very comprehensive and reassuring, and yet she went to a walk-in centre.
Yeah, I agree, Chair. I think even in some cases, particularly with the young children, when self-care is given, the parent still has an element of concern and does want a health professional to take a look. So I think in this particular age group, when it comes to rashes and fever, parents usually are more reassured when going to face-to-face.
I mean, I think that's extremely odd position, to be honest.
I was just going to comment. We sort of pat ourselves on the back and say that 9 out of 10 patients follow our advice. Traditionally, that's the sort of fine. But of course, that means that 1 in 10 doesn't.
Yeah.
And maybe this is an example of the 1 in 10.
Yeah, and it is usually this age group that doesn't. They usually do go on to that face-to-face.
Okay.
I think the only other comment I would pass, Chair, is still some of the rather unusual language within the content of pathways. If board members recall, one of the questions was, have you ever been told you've got an aortic aneurysm and Mouth-Brow syndrome?
Yeah.
And I don't think our employee actually knew what it was, never mind the patient, and the answer was no. So we are continuing to still feed that back to pathways, that we don't think some of the questions are appropriate within the system.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. All right, so I'm going to bring the public part of the board meeting to a close. First of all, just asking if anyone's got any other business that they want to put on the table. No? Okay, thank you. The next time we meet in public will be 25th of November here at Lehman Street at 10:30. What I'd like to do, it's now 20 to 12, or nearly 20 to 12. I would like to see whether we can sandwich a REMCO meeting in before the private part of the boards, before we reconvene in private session. So, Alan, can you remind me, Peter, you chair REMCO. I wonder whether, should we take a couple of minutes break, and those who are going to be involved in the REMCO meeting could then dial back in? Would that be possible?
Okay. Hang on then. I'll stay with
Why don't we fix the time when we're going to reconvene for the private part of the meeting, and then people who are not involved in REMCO can simply dial out and dial back in at the time. So what's the estimation of how long REMCO meeting will take? And do we want to then break for a sandwich? So if we reconvened at
10 past.
half an hour, shall we?
Well, if you wanted a sandwich as well, why don't we...
And then have a sandwich, why don't we reconvene at 1:30 for the private part of the meeting? Sorry, 12:30, yeah, sorry, it's the clock's not been changed. 12:30.
Yeah.
So we'll reconvene to the private meeting at 12:30. Yeah. That's great. And anybody who doesn't need to participate in REMCO can come back in at 12:30. But the REMCO meeting will begin at 11:45. So we'll have a 5-minute break.
Yeah. So those people involved in Remco just stay on the line, or
Okay.
Peter
Yep.
and Tim.
okay.
Okay.
Very good.